Hi, we are the dynamic duo plus two. My name is Calvin Soriano.
My name is Joshua Dar,
I'm Jason Dang. I'm Corey Chu.
and we are going to be demonstrating the component approach to catching.
According to Strohmeyer et al., the skill of catching is a fundamental manipulative motor skill involving the reception and control of a moving object, such as a ball, by using parts of the body such as the hands. Catching requires the ability to track the object's trajectory and coordinate the body's movements in order to intercept and secure the object. Key components of catching involve visual tracking to maintain focus on the moving object and anticipating its path, hand-eye coordination and body positioning to synchronize visual input with body movements to position accurately, and timing and control to execute the catch at the precise moment and absorbing the object's momentum to secure the object safely. Catching is relevant for sports such as baseball or basketball that involve the manipulation of an object, oftentimes a ball, in which the ball is thrown from one person and caught by another from different velocities, positions, and angles. However, catching can have benefits outside of sports, such as enhanced hand-eye coordination and improved motor planning and reaction time. We will be visualizing the developmental framework for catching across the lifespan, from early childhood, older childhood, adolescence, and older adulthood. The developmental approach used for the analysis of catching is the developmental sequences for catching created by Robertson et al. In 2001, which stems from Robertson and Halvorsson's component approach from 1984. The developmental sequences analyze the actions of the humerus, forearm, trunk, stepping, and stride length during catching.
Before we begin the assessment of our participants, this presentation uses the component approach originally developed by Robertson and Halvorsson in 1984 to evaluate each participant's catching level. This method breaks down the skill into three distinct parts: the arm, the hand, and body action. As mentioned previously, the purpose of this approach is to allow us to assess the development in each category rather than looking at the catch as a whole. This is important because parts develop at different rates, and this is especially apparent from early childhood to adolescent years. The following rubric was created from Robertson and Halvorsson's component model, and it aligns with the descriptions from the textbook Lifespan Motor Development by Haywood and Getchell from page 269 to 270. Here on our rubric, we have three developmental stages. The initial stage shows basic movements, so we'll see stiff arms or hugging the ball against the chest. The intermediate stage, which includes more controlled movements like slight elbow flexion and some stepping. And finally, the mature stage, which reflects coordinated, efficient catching mechanics, including reaching for the ball, rotating the trunk, and absorbing the force with the hands. Now that we've gone over the rubric, let's examine how our participants performed. In early childhood, catching is an emerging skill. As Haywood and Getchell describe, young children will likely display rigid arm positioning and trapping the ball against their chest rather than catching the ball with their hands. So when we examine this video, we'll be able to see the child use a hugging technique, which shows their limited force absorption and anticipatory control. We'll also notice that it's common for children to close their eyes and turn away in anticipation of the ball's arrival. So now let's review the video in a slower motion. Using Halvorsson's and Robertson's component approach, we see that with the arms, it's at a step 1 because the individual is using a hugging motion with the arms extended out, lacking elbow flexion. We see that the hands are also turned upward or away, and the hands don't form a catching pocket, so this would also be a step 1. The body action, there's no stepping or trunk rotation, and the individual remains stationary during the catch, so this would also be a step 1. In summary, the child is still developing hand-eye coordination and perceptual motor skills. As Haywood and Getchell explain, early childhood skills will demonstrate immature catching patterns. This is characterized by rigid arm action, limited visual tracking, and the use of a hugging technique. Furthermore, this reflects the lack of anticipation and refined motor planning expected from this age group. This also highlights Bernstein's theory on degrees of freedom, in which learners reduce movement complexity by limiting the number of joints they engage in. As mentioned by Gray et al., this process simplifies control during skill acquisition, and it is a common strategy among young children. Later in the presentation, as coordination improves, individuals can free these degrees, and we will be able to observe smoother, more adaptable movement patterns. So, as individuals get older and as we move into older childhood years, we'll notice that motor function and perceptual function will improve. We'll also notice that there will be more free degrees of freedom, therefore, we should see the skill of catching improve and everything should appear smoother. So now, let's review the footage. This individual I would say is between our intermediate and mature stage. This is because when we review the arm action, the arms and elbows extend, demonstrating control, and the arms also give, absorbing the impact, so this would be between a step 3 and a 4. When we review the hand action, the palms are facing the ball and the fingers are spaced to form this pocket, so that would definitely be a step 3, our mature stage. And when we review the body, it includes a slight weight shift indicating basic anticipation and trunk involvement, so this would be a step 2. So, children in this age range are entering the mature stages of catching. There are definitely noticeable improvements in body control and object manipulation that allow for more efficient catching strategies. This participant is demonstrating emerging coordination and intentional preparation, and they also demonstrate proficiency in catching because of other factors which we will get to later. Now, let's move on to review our adolescent.
As we see in the video, Caleb starts with his arms ready to catch the ball, with his elbows in flexion and his shoulders slightly flexed. He is in a preparatory posture before the ball arrives, and once he catches the ball in his hands, there is no scooping motion at all. His hands face towards each other with his palms facing inwards. His fingers are appropriately spaced in order to form a quote-unquote catching web, and his hands also adjust to the size of the ball. He starts with wider space against his hands and brings them closer as the ball approaches in order to properly catch the ball within his hands. In terms of his body action, it may include stepping or weight shifting, which indicates basic anticipation and trunk involvement, which also indicates that he is ready to adjust to the path of the ball if it was to deviate. All of these put him at the approaching mature stage in terms of the developmental stage. His rating is a 4 for the arm, a 3 for his hand, and 3 for the body. As children age into adolescent, their catching ability is starting to mature. As Haywood and Getchell from 2019 described, improvements in body control and object manipulation allow for more efficient catching strategies. Caleb demonstrates emerging coordination and intentional preparation consistent with typical adolescent development.
Now, let's examine the performance of our first adult participant. Despite being in the adulthood stage, where we expect mature catching skills, this individual displays less catching development. So now let's review the footage again. I would say this individual is between an initial and an intermediate stage. This is because when we examine the arm action, it's at a mature stage at a step 3 because the elbows are extended and the elbows flex, and the individual slightly moves towards the ball. The hands are a step 2 because the palms do face the ball, but it also traps the ball towards the chest. The body action is a step 1 because it mostly remains stationary with little trunk involvement, but this could be just because of the nature or the trajectory of the ball. So in summary, this participation shows strong upper limb coordination, but not so much with the lower body. This kind of behavior can emerge in adults who haven't really practiced the skill that much or whom they may be unfamiliar with the task. Furthermore, when we relate this back to Bernstein's motor learning theory, this participant may be simplifying the task by freezing more degrees of freedom, particularly in the trunks and the legs, and so that they can maintain control over the arms and the hands. This can make the catch more predictable, but it limits the overall efficiency and adaptability of the skill.
So in this scene, Josh readies himself to catch the ball by preparing flexion of his arms in front of him, and this allows him to reach out in any direction if the ball deviates from a straight path. Now, as the ball starts to approach Josh, he makes 2 quick choices. Number 1, the ball is on a path that is slightly higher than his hands are anticipating, so he needs to move his hands up higher to meet the ball at a certain point to catch it. And number 2, he knows that to catch the ball properly, he has to clamp the ball with his whole hands. So Josh opens up his fingers and clasps those fingers around the ball on contact.
And now finally, we're going to analyze the performance of an older adult participant, age 68 and up, and you'll notice that their motor skills remain stable across the lifespan, but now with aging, we have to consider physiological changes that can affect their coordination, reaction time, and joint mobility. And we can also see that there may be more freezing degrees of freedom because of this.
Here, we can see that Renzi started with her hands at her side. Once the ball was thrown, she brought her shoulders and elbows into flexion, her palms facing upwards in a supine position with her fingers spread apart. As the ball got closer, she had a slight yet quick forward trunk motion in order to receive the ball, but caught the ball with her hands. In terms of Halverson and Robertson's 1984 component sequence, we would rate this a 3 to 4 for the arm, a 1 for the hand, and a 2 for the body. This puts her at the intermediate to mature stage. The reasoning for why she's placed in the intermediate to mature stage is due to the slight scooping motion and the slight awkward movement of her trunk. In terms of body action, she had a slight awkward movement as shown by the slight lean of the trunk, which showed that she had to fight to remain balanced while also moving forward towards the ball path. In terms of her hands, her palms were facing upward, which already created a slight scooping motion as she caught the ball, but nothing too bad to the point where she had to catch the ball into her chest. Older adults may already know some proficient patterns that provide information about catching, such as intercepting with their hands and moving to the position of the ball. However, according to Haywood and Getchell from 2019, factors that might change in comparison to younger individuals include the speed at which the movement is initiated and the reach of their catchability. This was shown in the participant setup, as although they had great coordination, some of their catching patterns, such as palms facing upwards, their scooping motion, and a slight awkward trunk motion, conveyed some improper catching form, which puts them at the intermediate to mature developmental stage.
In the act of performing a fundamental motor skill, there are 3 domains established by Carl Newell in 1986 that influence motor movements and how they are performed via facilitation or limitation. These 3 domains are task, where the influence comes from the goals, equipment, and rules associated with the task; individual, which encompasses the physical and mental components of the individual; and environmental, which takes into account the physical surroundings, external stimuli, and cultural norms of the activity. There are many changing constraints in play when it comes to catching. For example, when it comes to catching a football, you can use 2 hands or 1 hand to catch the ball, and with the dimensions of the ball, it changes the way you catch the ball. In baseball, there are many changing aspects of the game, whether a runner is coming towards you and you have to catch a ball in time to get them out, or in football as well, where we have players trying to deny the ability to catch, and you have to act quickly in order to catch the ball. When it comes to size differences, a individual may be of smaller or larger stature than the ball, and this affects the way one might catch the ball. If one is smaller than the ball, as we see in the top right, one might need to expand their base and widen their arms to catch the entire ball rather than catching it with one hand and potentially dropping the ball. When we have tools, such as a glove or a lacrosse stick, we are able to catch the ball easier depending on the ability of the individual and the tool used to catch the ball. In soccer, the rules permit players from touching the ball with their hands except for the goalie, and when the goalie can catch the ball or block it, it denies the other team a point, and they are allowed to hand it over to their own team to further play.
And so now, we finally end our presentation with our findings. As a team, we analyzed the fundamental motor skill of catching across 5 different age groups: early childhood, adolescence, adulthood, and older adulthood. Using the component approach, we assessed each participant's performance by isolating their arm, hand, and body action, and then we assigned steps to each one to demonstrate their proficiency. Our findings show that younger participants demonstrated more immature movement patterns, such as hugging catches, poor hand positioning, and really just a lack of body adjustment. And when we move up as we get older, adolescents and some adults showed improved coordination, but it wasn't consistent across various ages from adolescence to adulthood. Interestingly enough, even older adults, where we assume that there's a lot of experience with catching, they showed some regression in body or hand action, and this might suggest to us that age-related factors such as a decline in balance, reaction time, or mobility can impact how we perform a skill such as catching. Overall, though, we learned that motor skill development is not only age dependent, but is also influenced by practice experience and physical capacity, like what we saw with the uh, later childhood individual who demonstrated high proficiency in catching. The component approach allowed us to see how skill elements can develop across a lifespan, and this is overall relevant in fields such as PE, rehab, and aging research, where we need to understand motor skill patterns so that we can inform intervention or do coaching.